Here
And
we
with me
go.
today, I have Alla Kaplan, who is a writer, a memoirist, and host of the YouTube podcast, The Jewish Stripper, as well as a budding author for her new book, which is going to come out soon. So, her
I
journey from
hope.
immigrating to the US as a child, navigating the adult entertainment industry to surviving an abusive marriage has shaped her unique voice. Through her writing and podcasting today, Alla offers raw, unfiltered insights into trauma, resilience, and the complexities of identity. Her work encourages others to confront their past and find healing through self-expression. Welcome to the show, Alla. Such an honor to have you here today. How are
Thank you.
you?
I'm good. I'm great. How are you?
Good,
It's,
good.
it's an honor to be here.
Oh,
It's a true honor to be interviewed by you and to be on your podcast. And
thank
as I said, I read your book, and all of your accomplishments are just extremely impressive.
you.
I'm in awe.
Bless you.
So I bow to you.
Thank you. Oh,
Namaste.
thank you so much, Ella. But as we said, today's about you, not me.
Okay.
But
Well,
no,
we have a lot of similarities that I read in your book.
we
There's
do.
being from a different culture than the one that you grew up with,
Yeah, yeah.
and having the childhood abuse, sexual abuse, and the trauma of that. And so I'm very honored to be here.
Yeah, yeah. And this is why I thought it'd be really good for you to share your own journey with us because your journey's been nothing but normal, should I say? And yeah, just let us know, for example, where you're from and how your life started out.
Yeah, so I'm a Jewish woman born in Russia in the 1970s when it was communist. And so I was born into a Jewish family. There's very um, diff odd circumstances because, and this is all public. I've written about this. I've posted um, some of my chapters on the website called medium.com, where I have a few chapters of the book. And so it's called The Life of a Jewish Stripper. That's what I'm calling it. And that's what I decided to call my company and use the logo that way. And so the podcast is The Jewish Stripper, Raw and Real with Alla Kaplan. The reason I said at first it was going to be just Raw and Real. And then I Googled Raw and Real, and there was a million Raw and Reals. So I went back to the drawing board and decided on the Jewish stripper because it grabs your attention. But in growing up in Russia, I didn't know until I was an adult that my mother and her sisters actually have the same lineage on their fathers, on their grandmothers. It's a very, I thought it was an incestuous thing. It turned out that my grandmother married my grandfather after her sister killed herself. And they already had two daughters before that, my mother's older sisters. My mother, one of her sisters, they are almost exactly 10 years apart. So there was a tragedy in the family early because the my grandmother's sister killed herself, and it was insinuated that the reason was for because my grandmother and my grandfather were maybe having an affair, and my mom was the result of that. So I was born to my mom, who was 19 when she had me, very young, still in university, just in university. And my father was apparently abusive to her while she was pregnant with me. So life started out already in a tumultuous state for me, even in the womb already. So, um, so I grew up without my father, and I grew up with my grandmother and my mom. And despite all of this family drama, my mom and her sister were very close when we lived in Russia. And at 9 years old, my mom decided when I was nine in 1979 to immigrate to the United States. She didn't want to go to Israel because she said that number one, she was afraid that my father would follow, because my father was abusive also, even after they divorced, which was, I was around maybe 2 years old or so when they divorced. And so he would do crazy things like come in the middle of the night and knock on our door and buzz um excuse me, the alarm. He would buzz the alarm, the doorbell, excuse me, and stand there all night, or we thought he was standing there. Or apparently what he would do is put a match into the doorbell so it wouldn't stop. And he did other things like called the fire department. I'd rather just speak into this. The fire department. He called the fire department in the middle of the night when there was no fire. He would call and say nasty things. So he didn't give child support, though. He demanded to see me, but he didn't give child support. So I was raised without my father. My grandmother was a tough woman, my mother's mother. Her father died when I was about 2.5 years old of a heart attack in front of her. We were at it's in Russian, it's dacha, which means it's a summer home. And so we were away at the dacha in the summer home, and my grandfather was about quite much older than my mother's mother. And so he was probably maybe in his 50s or 60s, even when he passed away right in front of her of a heart attack. So it was a very difficult situation for her. She loved her father very much, loved her father dearly. He was a big influence on her life. I didn't know that I was a child, so I didn't really know what being Jewish meant. I didn't know everything that comes with being Jewish, but Russia at the time even was a very anti-Semitic country. At the time, it was communist, so really it was an atheist country. There was no religion allowed at all. So, I'm sorry, my dog is barking. So my mother, you know, we lived with my grandmother up until the time that we left for Russia. And I remember when I was like maybe 4 or 5 years old, my grandmother's sister's husband used to babysit me. And I remember him taking me to the park. And I remember him putting his hand in my underwear. And that was the first time that I was sexually abused. And I was, at 4 or 5 years old, you really don't know. There's no it at the time in 1970s communist Russia. Nobody really talked about anything like we tried to get everything in the open nowadays. There really wasn't, nobody told you, oh, if something like that happens, go to an adult and tell an adult what happened to you. So I just never I thought that I probably maybe thought that it was something normal. And I wasn't, whether it felt good or not, I didn't even know, so that was that. I don't even remember for how long it happened, but eventually he died. So maybe that's why it stopped because he passed away. So then the next time that I can recall, it was right before we were leaving Russia. There was a gentleman who came over to our house to help us pack and things like that. And for some reason, I was in the room alone with him, and my mother and my grandmother were in the house. They were in the kitchen, maybe. And he went down on me orally, and he performed oral sex on me. I was 9 years old. And yes, it felt good. But again, I didn't know, if this was normal, what was going on. And then he asked me to return the favor. And that was the second time that I was sexually abused. And I lived with it until I was probably maybe in my 20s or 30s before I ever told my mother. And I was very angry with my mother because she told me that perhaps I dreamed it. That was her response. Her response was to denial, maybe. And I said, I was very upset, obviously, before I didn't know even, I was angry and I didn't want to talk to her or anymore. And I didn't know anything about therapy, or I didn't know how to deal with, I just knew that memories were coming up and something triggered the memory and it came up in conversation. And when I was told that perhaps I dreamed it, of course, I was devastated that she didn't believe me. But working through later on in our relationship, she did, understand that it happened, that it did happen. And of course, she felt guilt for not knowing. And I didn't know how to deal with it. So, so that was the basis, I guess, of it being that I could be abused again, in as an adult. Um, that kind of gave me, I guess, the foundation of being not a victim, but pursuing maybe relationships where somehow I was physically abused and sexually abused, and it was the foundation to allow other abuse to happen.
Yes, absolutely. And I can totally relate to that because it happened to you at such a young age, and you just think it's the norm. You just think that that's what happens. And so you grow up just allowing it to happen. And so what happened then when you actually became at a legal age to actually have boyfriends and have sex? Mm.
Yeah. I was very rebellious I became a rebellious teenager.
Mm,
Started drinking, hanging out with people who drank alcohol early. My best friend, her dad had a liquor cabinet, and we were already by age 13 or 14 smoking, and raiding her dad's liquor cabinet or drinking his beer. And I basically, when I turned of age 18 years old, legal in the US, you're legal at 18. And I had a boyfriend who was doing drugs, and I was doing drugs with him. I found people
mm,
to to all of these distractions to
mm.
numb the any previous pain.
Yeah.
And my mom didn't like my boyfriend. I had him sleeping over at the house and hiding it, when, telling him come in when she's not paying attention, and go leave when she's not paying attention. And when she found out, she basically threw me out of the house. Well, or she told me that I couldn't have him over. But even in when I was 16, going back to remembering when I was in middle school, when I was about 15 years old, and my friends and I had this like competition of who could get de-virginized first,
Oh,
who would lose their virginity first. And of course, I was all in to be in the race to be first.
wow.
And
Yeah.
so I lost my virginity like maybe 3 months before I turned 16. And so I was, all my friends that I had, we were hanging out with older guys,
Mm.
drinking, doing drugs, smoking. That was, be quiet, please. I'm, I hope, I'm sorry about the dog. So, uh,
No problem.
if you can hold on 1 second, I'm gonna put her in her crate so she'll stop barking. Hold on, give me one moment. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So I was at an early age, drinking, smoking, doing drugs, hanging out, finding people, and not realizing that. And honestly, it's not that my mom worked hard. She was always at work, or and she came. There was, a lot of emotional unavailability. And that was, her from, she was doing the best that she could do. She was a young mother.
yeah.
She had me when she was only 19 years old. So, nobody, they didn't have in 1970s Russia parenting books. So, there was no books on, what to do when you're expecting and how to raise a child. And, there was, even in the early 80s in the United States, it was just the beginning, when we were having talk shows that talk about parenting, or drugs and alcohol and sex, and all of those things were just starting to come out.
Mm,
But so my mom, um I I blamed her for a long time about all the things that happened to me, until I was able to forgive her for doing the best that she could do.
mm,
So that was also a difficult and strained relationship. And so it was just the two of us, until my grandmother came from Russia when I was about 12 or 13. And I was already at 12 or 13, just at that time. And I hadn't been around my grandmother for a long time because she was the major parent and in Russia, and she was pretty much the the caretaker of the house. She worked, she cooked, she cleaned, she did almost everything in the house, and was helping to raise me
Yeah.
as well in Russia. And then there were, some years when we we were apart, and I didn't call or write letters because I was trying to assimilate into the American culture. And my way of assimilating into the American culture, especially we lived when we came from the United States, the from Russia to the United States, we lived in a neighborhood that was mostly where they put everyone that was Russian Jews.
Mm.
And so at first, before we moved out of that neighborhood, I had all my friends were also Russian Jewish. And so we were also hanging out, drinking, smoking, and we were doing, things that our parents didn't know about.
Mhm.
But at the same time, what happened, we moved out of the neighborhood when I was about 12, and I wasn't able to see my friends all the time. And so I had to make new friends.
Mhm.
And so my new friends, I of course gravitated towards the people that were not into going to school to get good grades. And, a lot of my friends, when I moved out of that neighborhood, there a lot of my friends had well-to-do parents,
Mhm.
whereas I was being raised by a single mom on a single salary. We couldn't afford a lot of the things that my friends, we lived in an apartment. My friends lived in a house. A lot of them had, both parents, and they were able to, do things like afford nice vacations to Hawaii, or, other exotic locations or whatever. And they were also able to, wear the best clothes. They were able to take their parents' credit card and go shopping on their credit card for clothes. And so I was, kind of like the sidekick. I was always the best friend, but to the sidekick. And something would always happen to where my best friend and I somehow got separated and couldn't, continue to be friends or to be in each other's lives. And they were no longer, like, I had a best friend who, for instance, her family insisted that she go to this particular high school. And so she had to go to the school, and she made new friends, and she made new best friends. And I've always felt an abandonment. I had a lot of abandonment issues. And those issues with friends and best friends, of course, carried over into my adult relationships.
Mhm.
And so, I was, as far as I can see, I was always somehow replaying the drama
Mhm.
in my adult relationships. And sexually, I was, yeah, very promiscuous. Of course, I didn't have actually a lot of boyfriends, because I would I probably, as soon as there was sexual activity,
Mhm.
then, when you're young, it's like, okay, we're boyfriend and girlfriend now. Oh, we had sex, so now we're boyfriend and girlfriend. Or
Yeah.
to me, it was the emotional sex was an emotional attachment. But so at first, and unless I didn't have a boyfriend, and then I was sexually promiscuous with a lot of different guys, because I didn't have someone special in my life.
Yeah, well,
So
it's
it
just
was it was a crazy, it was
mm,
growing up, and it went into my 20s. So when actually I had a boyfriend who broke into our house when he went crazy when I was about, actually, short. It was the same guy that I was sneaking into the house, and I had moved out and moved in with him for a while, and then we broke up. I was around maybe 19 or 20, and I moved back in with my mom. I always ended up going back to mom.
mm,
Mom was my safety net. Um, and so my mom was okay with me now having this boyfriend. But then he hit me, and that I left and I came back to live with her. And then when I broke up with him, he went crazy saying, one of those, if I can't have you, no one else can. And to me, that, I guess, in a way, made me feel special. I didn't realize well, I realized at that point that this is not normal,
mm,
that this person is a little bit, should we say, psychotic, or
mm,
at that point, I didn't know all the different words. So I
yeah.
just call him crazy. And we even had to go to court because what he did was he broke into the house, and I had just gone shopping for new clothes shortly before, and he went and he cut up all the new clothes and shoes and all kinds of, it was crazy. He broke through the sliding glass door, and we lived on the top floor, and he was very tall. He was like 6'4". So he climbed up the balconies of the building, the apartment building,
Wow,
and broke in through the glass door, shattered the glass door.
wow.
And how we knew that something happened was we came home and the front door was a little bit ajar. So we said, "Oh, we can't. I'm afraid he could be sitting on the couch with a gun
Mm,
for
mm,
all I know." So we ended up going to court. So I had to take a restraining order. So, and the judge had to tell him, if you see her walking down the street, look the other way, go in the other direction, don't bother her, because I would like pull up at a gas station to get gas, and he would jump out from nowhere
wow,
and start to threaten me. And
wow.
this is just at 18 or 19 years old, right? Very young.
That is,
So
yeah,
that was like one of my first, you know, insane relationships, where it was this thing with, I love you so much, I'll kill you.
yeah, yeah. Boy,
So
okay. Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. Bless you.
so moving into, like, I guess, I actually work. I don't really talk about what I do on my regular 9 to 5 job right now, but I can say I'm in the credit industry, in the collection industry, sort of. So what I worked, got a full-time job, and it was told to me, I was made very clear to me, even when I was in high school, by my mom, that, she wasn't going to pay for my education, that if I didn't get good grades and I couldn't get a scholarship, or if I wanted to go to college, I was going to have to pay for it myself. And I decided just to skip college altogether. Excuse me. So, my college was what we call the School of Hard Knocks. So my college, my education was pretty much, in my 20s. I met when I was about 21. I met my ex-husband, my first husband. Hasn't been another husband since. So I think I was maybe commitment phobic after my abusive ex-husband. He's very good looking, very, very charismatic. Um, he was, the guy that it seemed that every girl wanted to be with, to at least to have sex with, to, but I became obsessed with him, and I was willing to do pretty much almost anything to get him and keep him. And the abuse, physically, I didn't realize at first that, the abuse was emotional, that it was mental, because he is a narcissist, and narcissists, I've I've learned from experience and from reading about it and understanding what I've gone through and what a narcissist is, and a pretty much sociopath. And I didn't realize that, people at first groom you for that type of abuse, that it's called grooming. I didn't know about grooming. Someone told me about grooming a few years ago. I was seeing a new therapist, and I was telling her that it seemed that every guy that I've been with, after the next woman that he's with, he treats really well. And she said, "Oh, you're a groomer." She called me a groomer, and I didn't know what that meant. And I was like in shock, because I said, "Oh wow, I've never been called that before." And so I went and started reading about grooming and what grooming is. And so the way that, like, someone who is grooming you for more abuse, at first they, are very kind to you and treat you well and do things like cook you meals and give you massages and buy you nice gifts, or they make you feel like you are the only person in the world. And my ex-husband was very into pornography, and he was very into strippers and strip clubs. And I wanted to be what I thought was pleasing to him. So after probably maybe a year and a half, we moved in together. And he actually made it clear to me from the beginning. And I ate it up and didn't even think that he told me, when we moved in together, we're moving in as friends, even though we were like a couple. But he was saying, we're moving in as friends, and I'm still going to be with other people. I'm going to be with other people. And I accepted that, with everything that I had been through. All I wanted to do was anything to be a part of his life, to hold on to him. And so it just gradually got worse and worse. And our wedding was terrible. The wedding night was terrible. All he wanted to do was do drugs on our wedding night. He was very into cocaine, and I actually didn't want to go through with the wedding, but my so-called best friend at the time, who was my matron of honor, I was her maid of honor at her wedding. I had actually, the morning of the wedding, my face broke out in hives. I was at my mother's house. My face, I woke up and it was completely red. And I didn't want to disappoint anyone. So I got my makeup on and I went to the church and I went through with the wedding. But my bed, right before I was sitting in the room, and my best friend came in screaming at me, "Everybody's waiting for you. Hurry up. What are you doing?" And I was almost in tears. And so not only was I, going through all these thoughts that I don't want to do this, at the same time, my so called best friend is screaming at me instead of sympathizing with me and empathizing with me and saying to me, "Are you sure?" Not saying to me, "Are you sure you don't want to go through this?" And so I went through with the wedding, and I knew that day that it was the worst decision that I could have made. But the person in me who believes in doing the right thing, and if you say vows that you have to honor these vows. And I don't know whether even I was in love or I was just in this obsessive mode. Because even when my grandmother was here in the United States for several years, and my grandmother was dying of cancer. And since my ex-husband is black, that was a big deal. That was in the Jewish family, even though we're supposed to be not racist, being with someone black was a big no. And so my family never came over to where I lived. They never wanted to have, I was the black sheep of the family, literally the black sheep of the family. Um, Pretty much like from the start. So I didn't even want to go see my grandmother because I was afraid to leave him, that the minute that I left the house, he would be with someone, he would have someone else over, or he would be with someone else. I was, it took me a long time to forgive myself for the fact that I wasn't helping my mom when she was losing her mom, because I was being so selfish, so self centered. I was so into being afraid of what this guy was doing while I was, not with him in the same room. And so it just, once we got married, it went from, and he'd hit me before. The abuse started even before we got married. And I didn't tell anyone because, of course, I had that shame. And I blamed myself because, hey, I made the decision to marry this guy. So if I made the decision, I have to live with my decision, and that whole till death do us part thing. And, you know, um, I blame myself for everything. And my mom was losing her mom. So I didn't feel like it was a good time also to go to anyone and say, "Hey, I'm being physically abused." So it was a crazy situation. And I continued. So we moved around a lot because he was always taking my money, and I would give him money, and he was supposed to go pay rent, but he wasn't paying the rent. He was buying drugs with it. And he was hanging out with I would go to work, and sometimes I would do double shifts at work at the strip club. I would work both the day shift and the night shift, and he would always be come to pick me up at the end of the day or at the end of the night. And basically, the only thing that he would say to me is, how much money did you make? You have money? Give me money. And so, and I was, and every time, of course, after the physical abuse, it would be, I'm sorry. It would be, I'm so sorry. I'm not going to do it again. I love you, blah, blah, blah. So eventually, I actually decided I'm going to leave. We were living with a girl that I worked with. Problem was, she was a drug addict too. So they did drugs together. So when we were living with her, he had an ex-girlfriend that came from out of town, and he went to hang out with her while I was working. And then he was gone the whole night. And I at that point I said, that's it. Okay, I'm done now. And I went and to a hotel, and he convinced me to come back, and I did. And so it was probably, it took about 3 years, approximately, yeah, us being together about 3 years before marriage and after marriage, that it took me the strength to leave. So what happened was, finally at the very end, and this is probably the most, traumatic. I had other traumatic experiences, but this was probably left the biggest mark on my life as far as men go and relationships. So, and this was 30 years ago, but it's still something that I can recall very clearly any day of the week. Um, we lived for one point at one point in San Francisco, and then we went to Hawaii, and it was beautiful, and I had these, dreams of staying in Hawaii, having children in Hawaii, raising my children in Hawaii. And I had all these crazy dreams that, he kind of sold me on these dreams. Like, isn't it going to be amazing to live here and raise our kids here and blah. And finally, one night he took a big mag flashlight, like the kind that the police use. And I came when we had come home after I was at work until like 3 or 4 in the morning. And I said to him, I can't live like this anymore. And if you don't change and you don't do something, that was at the point where I was starting to ask him to get help with anger management. And I felt sorry for him, because at one point he told me about how his father had abused him. He told me about how a relative had sexually abused him. And he cried on my shoulder like a child at one point. And I guess that made me feel like, oh, this is why he is the way he is. But when he tried to kill me more than once. There was a time when he pushed my face into a brick wall. When there was a time when he hit me with the old fashioned telephone, that, with the push buttons. He took the phone and just hit it upside my head and tried to choke me once. So in any case, the he took a mag flashlight, and this time he hit me on the head so hard that I passed out. And when I woke up, I realized that there was blood all over the place, and my head was bleeding. And went to the front desk of this. We lived in a kind of like a apartment hotel where you rented by the week, but it was really nice. It had a little pool, whatever. And I went. So there was an older couple that ran the hotel, and I went and I asked them to call 911. And that was the first time that I actually decided to take action against him and call the police and have him arrested for domestic violence. And so that was my wake up call. And I knew before, because his sister actually came shortly before that to visit us in Hawaii with her girlfriend. And his sister pulled me aside and asked me, "Are you happy?" And I was afraid to say anything because that's his sister. So she's going to go, they were very close. She's going to go back and tell him whatever I say. So, and even he had asked me maybe a couple times, "Are you happy?" And I was afraid if I said I was unhappy, I was going to get, beat up. So I would just lie and say, "Of course, I love you and I'd do anything for you." But there was a point where after that happened, I started saying, maybe you need to go to anger management classes. And, I started to actually start to say, if you don't get anger management, I'm going to leave. I started to have dreams. Actually, I had dream of pushing him off a cliff. That's when I realized, and after he hit me in the head, and when I woke up in a pool of my own blood, that one of us, one of us is going to end up dead, and hell if it's going to be me. So I I left. I packed up my stuff. We were living in the hotel, and I talked to this girl that I worked with, and I think that she was a guardian angel, because her and her boyfriend took me to their house, and I guess they had a lot of what do you call them, the frequent flyer miles, and they got me a ticket for an airplane ticket for me to go home or go wherever I wanted to go. And so I was going to go to my mom's again. But I felt like if I went to my mom, it was like admitting that I need help. It was admitting that I'm wrong. It was admitting that everything I'd done had failed. My relationship had failed. So I decided not to go to my mom's. I decided to go to Connecticut to a club where we had stayed in Connecticut for a while I was with him, and I was working there. And I decided that I wasn't ready to admit that I'm wrong, that I need help. So I went to Connecticut and I just stayed there for a couple months. And I went to the club and I worked there. And then, of course, like an idiot, I called him and I went back to him. He was at that point back in Maryland. We're from the Washington, D.C. area, Washington, Baltimore area. And so he decided, I went back and I don't know why, but as soon as he slapped me again, I left. That at that point, I left. We were pretty much homeless. We were staying at his father's house, and he was only going to let us stay there for a short while. So I left and I went to a little motel and I cried my eyes out and I decided no more. That's it, no more. And so that's when I unfortunately at that point um I saw when I was working in Washington D.C. At the club that I used to work at. I went back there and he would send me like roses and a bottle of vodka as a way to try to my my a bottle of my favorite vodka to try and get me back, and a dozen of roses that was supposed to get me back. So I didn't go back though. And then at that point when we spoke on the phone and he was screaming at me, calling me a whore. Now I was a whore. Now I was a whore because I wasn't his cash cow anymore. I wasn't feeding his drug habit. I wasn't taking him back. I wasn't giving him money. And so now I was a whore. So it's a crazy, it's a crazy story. And I wrote it all down. And I hopefully will one day sell my book, finish
Yeah.
my book and sell my book.
Wow, it is a story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Amazing. And so what happened after that? How did you actually heal?
I think I started to heal when I started having nervous breakdowns.
Mm,
And even then I called him, I talked to him. We did get not back together, but for a short time I, went back with him, had sex with him, but he was not making me a priority. He was still seeing other women. He was living in a house that some woman owned. And that's when I started to realize that he this person was never going to change.
mm,
And I think I started to heal when I started therapy. I was living in New York State at the time, and I had a nervous breakdown, and I was in the hospital. And after that, I started therapy. And in therapy, when I started to talk about all of this, the family drama that brought me to the point, and I was with a guy in New York, some this guy that I actually met at a club where I was working, and I thought I was in love with him, and I left him. I ended up leaving him too. We were going to get married, but he didn't give me a ring or anything. But I found the courage. At that point, I had no problem when I saw something wasn't working to leave.
mm,
I started to realize that I had more worth than to just be with some guy just to have someone,
mm,
just to say that I have someone. or just to have someone as a companion.
Mm.
I started to realize that being alone was peace,
Mm.
that there was a peace in being alone. I wish I had been like you and well, at one point I did travel on my own a little bit. And I I read your book and you've traveled everywhere, and it's amazing that you like I'm afraid to travel by myself, but I want to.
Mm.
But I'm one of those people that I'm afraid to travel by myself. But after reading your book, I'm actually very inspired to go and do it.
Great.
But I started to realize that having no one was more peaceful than having someone. And when I started to, um, yes, I will admit honestly, and I have said this before, I'm on medication. I have bipolar. I have, depression, maybe a little side of schizophrenia. Who knows? The diagnosis is kind of a little bit iffy,
Mm.
but when I and but I, I got on medications and I started to do the work in therapy.
Yeah.
And so I started to understand that being on my own was better than being with someone who didn't make me feel good, that there was no reciprocity in a relationship,
Yeah.
that I was doing all the giving and they were doing all the taking.
Yeah. 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 Wow. And that was going to lead me on to my next question. So, what's been the most significant lesson or lessons that you've learned through your journey?
Um, I say this in my book too, and one of the I think the biggest thing that I've learned in life is that to follow my gut instinct, the very first instinct, the separate the good vibes from the bad vibes. That when something feels wrong, it feels, and you go against it and you do something regardless of that bad feeling,
Yeah.
it's going to lead to a bad place. So that first instinct, that very first instinct, when you get those hairs on the back of your neck or those goosebumps, when something doesn't feel right, the people pleasing comes in.
Yeah.
That you don't want to disappoint someone. Well, excuse me, but the heck with disappointing someone. What about disappointing me?
Mm. Yeah.
What about me? What do I want? Who cares what this person wants? It's in the end, it's not, I mean, it's not all about me in a narcissistic way,
No.
but the first instinct is always the right one.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest lesson.
Okay. I love that. Thank you. And so, what are your plans now with your book and your podcast moving forward?
It's crazy. I don't know where it's all gonna go. I intend to, even when I don't have guests, I try to do my podcast at least once a week.
Mm.
I do it because it's something, it's a passion. It's become a passion of mine to, talk about. I had, like, for instance, this woman from Nigeria had contacted me, and we did an episode on men's mental health. And it was a really, her friend, I guess, saw my podcast. And he saw the narcissist episode, which got, like, I don't know, 7,000 hits or 1,200 hits or something. It's like a lot. And he connected us, her friend connected us, which is the same guy that actually was being just judgmental about strippers because they're very Christian. But she and I did. I said she wanted to come on as a guest, and I said sure, come on as a guest. And we did this men's mental health, which is huge and very significant and important
Mm.
because if men's mental health is not right, how can they treat women right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So is so I think that I'm going to work, put my head back into the book. I almost feel like it's only about 159 pages,
Mm.
and um I had a hard time continuing to write after October 7th happened because all I wanted to do was write about that. It was very difficult for me as a Jewish person. And I felt like, well, why is my life so important now after October 7th happened? But I feel like the book just needs to be edited really. And it's almost like, at first I say there's no happy ending here. But the truth is that the happy ending is I have me. I have me back.
Yeah,
So the happy ending is that I know, maybe I don't know exactly who I want to be with, what kind of person. I don't know exactly my type, but I know what's not my type
mm.
for sure. I know that I'm more at peace when I'm not letting anyone disrupt my peace.
Yes. Yeah.
So and that goes for family, friends, any toxicity.
Yeah. Very true.
And so I'm going to maybe get this book finished, published, and um, I would love to, continue on my podcasting journey. And your book, you can't imagine how much your book inspired me because I've liked yoga always, but not been able to afford it all the time. So, if I like it, I need to start practicing it on my own.
Mm.
I gained a lot of weight as with because of the medications and things like that. But so the plan is really I you know what? I feel like the plan will reveal itself.
It will. Yeah.
That I mean, um I can do things to manifest what it is that I learned that I am with the grace of God or the universe, karma, whatever you want to call it,
Mm.
that even though there is everything is connected, but the I am the captain of my own ship.
Yeah.
Where I go is where I want to take me.
That's a really good, yeah, I like that analogy. We are the CEOs of our own lives and we dictate where we go.
Yes.
Mm. And so where can my listeners connect with you?
So, excuse me, I need a tissue. A little bit. So, I am. I have. I have to upload tons of all my stuff to Apple, and I have an RSS feed account. But mostly, as you can see behind me, my logo is on YouTube at Alla Kaplan,
Mhm.
ALLAKAPLAN 3270. That's on YouTube. So, but so people can connect with me, when I do an episode and I go live on Facebook, they can connect with me live on Facebook. They can connect with me live on YouTube whenever I do an episode. I have a couple, I think maybe just my introduction on Apple and Amazon and all of the platforms.
Mhm.
So anybody can connect with me on any platform because I have everything on Spotify. And I actually, what is it? There's a new one called Rumble. I
Mhm.
think it's rumble.com. And one of the reasons I heard about it from um, Brad Lee's team, I don't know if you know who Brad Lee is.
Mhm.
He does a podcast called Dropping Bombs,
Yeah.
and they interviewed me because they had they had a thing on Facebook, applied to be on my podcast. And
Um,
I applied and they contacted me and they're like, why should you be, why do you want to be on our podcast? What are you selling? Are you selling a product? And I said, I'm the product. I'm selling me. That's what I'm selling to you. And so, it's everywhere. I think I just have a ton of work to do as far as uploading videos and audio to different platforms. But you could they can connect with me on any of the platforms: Amazon, Spotify, um, Apple, just about anywhere.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So what I'll do
I
is
know we're run over time.
it's okay. Yeah, no, it's been great. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and also how to connect with you. And I will be sharing this link in the episode. It's been an
Thank you
absolute
so much for
pleasure.
having me
Thank you so
and inspiring me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really appreciate your gratitude and your the fact that you do feel inspired and absolutely travel, go and do your yoga and you can find so many short yoga
And
clips on
and
YouTube.
Reiki and energy, Matt. I was just I was pretty blown away by your book, really honestly.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much. That really means a lot. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Oh, lovely. So, yeah, that is all we have time for today. I hope you all enjoyed the show. Please do reach out to Alla if you have any questions about anything discussed today. I am sure she would be honored to hear from you. So, until the next episode, take care, my friends, and I look forward to seeing you then.